The Unseen Reckoning, a deep dive into the confrontation that could redefine Brooke and Taylor's legacy. For over 3 decades, the world of the bold and the beautiful has orbited a singular, blazing sun of conflict, the rivalry between Brooke Logan and Dr. Taylor Hayes. Their battle, waged over the heart and soul of Ridge Forrester, has been the show's foundational epic, relentless tug-of-war that has defined their lives, their families, and their very identities. We have seen them fight with words, with wedding cakes, and with withering glares across the hallowed halls of Forrester Creations. But fans have always wondered what would happen if the performance stopped. What if, for once, they were left alone, stripped of their audience, with nothing but the raw, unvarnished truth between them? In a moment of storytelling so potent it has been passionately discussed and dissected by superfans like the insightful Matt Hanby, we explore a confrontation that transcends melodrama. This isn't a scene of polished monologues or a tearful, tidy reconciliation. This is a soul-sucking, brutally honest excavation of the shared wounds, betrayals, and bitter disappointments that have festered for a generation. It is the unaired reckoning that could shatter the very firmament of the show, a confrontation that begins not with a fight for a man, but with a desperate, agonizing fight to understand themselves. Chapter 1. The Battlefield and the First Volley. The scene is the Forrester living room, a space that is less a home and more a psychological battlefield. The ghosts of 1,000 arguments linger in the air. It is here that Brooke and Taylor, two titans of torment, find themselves alone. There is no Ridge to distract or divide them, no Steffi or Hope to act as referees or seconds in their corner. The usual safety nets are gone, and what remains is a silence thick with decades of resentment. This confrontation defies the usual soap opera cliches. It begins not with a catfight, but with a low, simmering intensity. Brooke, her voice steady, but her eyes flashing with a long-held fury, breaks the silence. "You always pretended to be the saint," she snaps, the accusation cutting through the years of tepid truces and forced smiles. It's a familiar charge, but this time it lands differently. She's not just scoring a point, she's peeling back the first layer of a carefully constructed facade. Her words are not just an attack, but a confession of her own perception. "But you were just as selfish as me," she continues, the admission hanging in the air. "Only you were better at hiding it." Taylor, never one to retreat from a verbal match, volleys back with equal venom. "And you always acted like you were the victim," she retorts, her voice sharp with the pain of a woman who has felt perpetually sidelined. "Like Ridge was just a helpless man who kept falling into your bed by accident. You knew what you were doing every single time." This is not their usual squabble. The polished, picture-perfect monologues are gone, replaced by a brutal honesty that can only exist when two people have nothing left to lose. They are not fighting over Ridge anymore. They are fighting over history itself, and in doing so, they have unknowingly begun a process of emotional disarmament. Chapter 2. Confessions in a War Zone, the Unmasking. From this initial exchange, the conversation spirals into a territory of raw, brutal truth. They begin to confess things they've never dared to speak aloud, not even to themselves. Brooke admits that a part of her, a dark and hungry part, enjoyed taking what Taylor had. It wasn't just about love for Ridge, it was about the victory, the validation of being chosen over the perfect Dr. Hayes. In a stunning parallel, Taylor confesses that at her lowest points, her all-consuming hatred for Brooke had once outweighed her love for Ridge. Her life had become so defined by her opposition to Brooke that the man at the center of it all became secondary to the rivalry. They unearth the specter of Nick Marone, another man caught in the gravitational wake of their destructive orbit, further proof that their pain was a self-perpetuating storm. They reveal their deepest hypocrisies and insecurities. Brooke questions whether she is even capable of a real, untainted love, or if all she knows is how to manipulate and seduce. Taylor admits that she has used her children's pain as a shield, weaponizing their hurt to justify her own righteousness. It's a devastating exchange where masks are not just removed but torn away, leaving both women exposed, vulnerable, and gasping for air in the wreckage of their shared past. Chapter 3. The Quiet Epiphany, the Trauma Bond. As the emotional bloodbath subsides, the room falls into a heavy silence. It is in this exhausted, hollowed-out space that the true epiphany occurs. Brooke, her voice cracking with a vulnerability she has rarely shown, whispers the words that change everything. "We weren't fighting for Ridge," she says, more to herself than to Taylor. "We were fighting to matter. To someone." That single sentence reframes 30 years of conflict. It was never just about a man. It was about two women conditioned by society, by their families, and by their own insecurities to seek their value in being chosen. As superfan Matt Hanvey so astutely identified, this was more than a feud. It was a trauma bond. They were connected not by their love for Ridge, but by the shared trauma he inflicted and which they, in turn, inflicted upon each other. Taylor can't argue. For the first time, there is no witty comeback, no psychological analysis to deflect the truth. There is only a slow, dawning recognition. She looks at Brooke and sees not her rival, but a mirror reflecting her own pain, her own desperate need for validation. In a moment of profound clarity, Taylor finally asks the question that has been buried beneath decades of anger. "Do you ever wonder," she begins, her voice quiet, "what kind of women we might have become if we hadn't spent half our lives fighting over Ridge?" Brooke looks up, and for the first time in their shared history, she doesn't answer with sarcasm or shade. She simply nods. All the time. In that moment, a fundamental shift occurs. They don't hug. That would be too easy, too tidy for the mess they've just unearthed. Instead, they truly see one another, perhaps for the very first time. They are not the saint and the sinner, the victim and the villain. They are survivors of the same psychological battlefield, and with that realization, a new, fragile understanding is born. Chapter 4. The Generational Echo, the Ripple Effect. This profound shift between Brooke and Taylor begins to send shockwaves through their families. The generational patterns they unknowingly forged are now cast in a stark, new light. Both mothers begin to see their own struggles tragically echoed in the lives of their daughters, Hope and Steffi. Taylor watches Steffi, who has become obsessively fixated on Hope's choices with Thomas, and sees a reflection of her own past. She sees a woman whose identity is becoming dangerously intertwined with judging another, whose strength is a defensive posture against perceived threats. In a heart-wrenching conversation, Taylor confesses to Steffi, "I used to tell myself I was the better person, that I had more self-respect. But then I'd look at your mother, and I would hate myself for envying her. I taught you to see love as something you had to guard, not something you could grow." Simultaneously, Brooke has a similar moment with Hope. After another exhausting cycle of the Hope-Liam-Thomas triangle, Brooke finally sees the pattern for what it is. "I taught you that love always meant sacrifice," Brooke admits quietly. "That being chosen, even halfway, was better than being alone. I taught you to accept love from a man who was torn because I was always accepting love from a man who was torn." For Hope and Steffi, hearing these confessions from their mothers is a seismic event. They are forced to confront the reality that their own rivalries are not entirely their own creation, but an inheritance of pain, a learned behavior passed down from the two women who shaped their world. Chapter 5. The King Without a Kingdom, Ridge's Undoing. While the women in his life are undergoing a quiet revolution, Ridge Forrester remains blissfully, arrogantly unaware. He continues to operate under the illusion that he is the sun around which their worlds revolve. When he calls Brooke with an invitation to join him for the Forrester International Showcase in Europe, he expects the usual dance of pursuit and hesitation. Instead, he is met with a calm, almost indifferent smile. "I think it's time I start writing a story that doesn't revolve around you, Ridge," Brooke tells him, her newfound freedom ringing in her voice. When he turns to Taylor, expecting her to seize the opportunity, he finds a similar self-possession. For the first time, she is not trying to win. She is trying to heal. Ridge is left unmoored. The man who derived his power from their conflict, from being the prize in their endless war, suddenly finds himself on the sidelines of their lives. His indecision is no longer a source of dramatic tension but a sign of his own emotional immaturity. As Brooke and Taylor begin to define themselves outside of him, he becomes a relic of a past they are finally ready to move beyond. Chapter 6. New Storms on the Horizon. The fallout from Brooke and Taylor's reckoning continues to ripple outward, creating new and unexpected conflicts. Steffi, though shaken by her mother's confession, struggles to let go of her old patterns. Suspecting Thomas's intentions, she secretly hires a private investigator to follow him in Paris. The discovery is shocking. Thomas has been meeting with a mysterious woman, a therapist specializing in narcissistic personality behaviors. His desire for change is real, but his secrecy creates a new layer of mistrust. On the other side of town, the Spencer family is embroiled in its own drama. Bill, shaken by his son Will's growing closeness to Luna, begins investigating her past. He uncovers a dark chapter involving a Forrester Designs scandal and secret offshore accounts, a scandal Poppy covered up to protect her family. Bill, the protective father, confronts Will with this information, hoping to shatter his son's idyllic view of Luna. But Will, in an act of defiance, doubles down on his love, creating a deep rift between father and son. This culminates in a threat from Bill to cut Will off from Spencer Publications, just as the Logan women are beginning to find a fragile peace. These new storms demonstrate a crucial truth. While the central rivalry may be evolving, the world of the bold and the beautiful is never without its turmoil. The pain and secrets of the past continue to demand their own reckoning. Conclusion: a bold and beautiful new era. Though this raw, soul-bearing confrontation between Brooke and Taylor may only exist in the realm of fan theory, its implications are profound. It represents the story that fans have longed for, a narrative that honors the deep, complex history of these characters while allowing them to finally evolve beyond it. It would mark the end of an era defined by a love triangle and the beginning of something far more compelling, the story of two women, once sworn enemies, who find common ground in their shared survival. They could become allies, co-conspirators in healing, and perhaps one day even friends. They would finally be free to become the protagonists of their own stories, not side characters in Ridge Foresters. This is the scene that should have aired. Not because it was explosive, but because it was real. It would force every character to look in the mirror and ask the most terrifying question of all: what if our greatest enemies are just reflections of the parts of ourselves we are too afraid to face? It would be more than a plot twist. It would be a revolution, a truly bold and beautiful new beginning. Thanks for watching this videos. Please hit the subscribe button for more updated news.